The Good Place. Eleanor wakes up in the afterlife and is told she's made it into paradise. She's welcomed into a perfect neighborhood where everyone has a soulmate, and every detail is tailored to their happiest life. There's only one problem. Eleanor knows she doesn't belong there. She was selfish and cruel when she was alive. Determined not to get caught, she tries to learn ethics and hide her flaws. But the strange glitches in the neighborhood keep getting worse. Chaotic storms, collapsing buildings, neighbors unraveling. The final twist reveals the truth. This isn't paradise at all. Eleanor and her friends are in the bad place, being tortured through clever psychological tricks instead of fire and brimstone. Suddenly, what seemed like a lighthearted sitcom about redemption becomes a dark experiment in manipulation. Game of Thrones. Robb Stark is a young king fighting to avenge his father and win independence for his people. To secure victory, he needs allies, but he angers a powerful family by breaking a marriage pact. To repair the insult, Robb attends a wedding at their castle with his mother and wife. The evening begins with food, laughter, and music, every sign of peace. In this world, there is an unbreakable rule. Guests are safe under the host's roof. But in the middle of the feast, the doors slam shut. The music changes. Soldiers draw weapons. In seconds, the gathering turns into a massacre. Robb, his mother, and his pregnant wife are slaughtered by the very hosts who swore to protect them. Instead of a victory, their rebellion ends in blood. What was supposed to be a sacred celebration becomes one of television's most infamous betrayals. Lost. After a plane crash strands dozens of people on a mysterious island, the survivors scramble to form a community. They assign jobs, build shelter, and start keeping track of everyone who made it off the wreck. It feels chaotic, but safe enough to believe they're all in it together. Then, one small detail changes everything. A passenger manifest is checked against the people on the beach, and one name doesn't match. A man named Ethan is with them, helping, blending in, acting like any other survivor. But he was never on the plane. The survivors thought disaster had united them, but instead they discover the island already belongs to someone else, and he is far more dangerous than the wilderness around them. Dexter. By day, Dexter Morgan is a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Police Department. By night, he's a serial killer who hunts other killers, carefully hiding his double life from friends and coworkers. His world is thrown into chaos when Miami is terrorized by a murderer called the Ice Truck Killer, who drains his victims of blood and leaves their bodies in public places. But this case feels personal. The killer seems to be taunting Dexter directly, staging crime scenes with eerie precision that only Dexter could fully understand. The investigation builds to a devastating reveal. The ice truck killer is Rudy, a man dating Dexter's sister, who is also Dexter's long-lost brother. What seemed like a battle between hunter and hunted is really a family reunion twisted into horror. The entire season's mystery wasn't just about catching a killer, it was about forcing Dexter to confront the bloodline he never knew he had. Squid Game. Hundreds of desperate people are lured into a secret contest, forced to play children's games where losing means death. Among them is Gi-hun, a struggling man who forms an unlikely bond with an elderly player named Il-nam. Frail, confused, and seemingly harmless, Il-nam becomes a source of warmth in the middle of unthinkable violence. When he dies during a game, Gi-hun is devastated, carrying the memory of their friendship long after he emerges as the sole survivor. But in the final episode, Gi-hun learns the truth. Il-nam is alive, and not just alive, he was the creator of the games all along. The weakest player was actually the one pulling the strings. Instead of a tragedy of chance, Gi-hun realizes it was betrayal by design, and the man he trusted most had orchestrated the nightmare from the very start. The twist didn't just expose a mastermind, it turned friendship itself into the cruelest illusion. Mr. Robot. Elliot Alderson is a brilliant but unstable hacker leading a cyber revolution against the world's most powerful corporations. After launching a massive digital attack, Elliot withdraws, narrating his days as if he's hiding out in his mother's home. He describes strict routines, limited movement, and regular meetings with familiar faces. But nothing about his story quite adds up. The routines are too rigid, the visits too controlled, and the world outside always seems just out of reach. Then the truth is revealed. Elliot hasn't been living in his mother's house at all. He's been in prison. The entire season's narration was a self-constructed fantasy, a coping mechanism to make captivity feel like freedom. The twist forces viewers to realize that Elliot's greatest deception isn't toward his enemies or his friends, it's toward himself, and by extension, the audience. Suddenly, every scene takes on new meaning. You also no longer know what to believe as the viewer. Westworld. In a futuristic theme park, wealthy guests live out violent fantasies among lifelike androids who don't know their machines. Two storylines seem to unfold side by side. In one, a young newcomer named William falls in love with a host and begins questioning the park's morality. In another, decades later, a hardened veteran called the Man in Black searches for hidden meaning within the games. For much of the season, their stories feel parallel, two men shaped differently by the same world. But the reveal shows they're not parallel at all. William and the Man in Black are the same person, seen at different points in time. The twist collapses the timelines into one, proving that Westworld isn't just manipulating its characters, it's manipulating the audience's perception of time itself. What seemed like two journeys was really one descent, from innocence into obsession. Dexter. For an entire season, Dexter hunts Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity Killer, a man who appears to be a family man by day and a brutal serial murderer by night. Their game of cat and mouse builds to Dexter finally cornering him, determined to end the cycle of death and protect his own family. After killing Arthur, Dexter believes he's finally secured safety. But when he returns home, the true horror is waiting. His wife Rita lies dead in the bathtub, murdered by Trinity before Dexter caught him. Their baby son sits nearby, crying in a pool of blood, a chilling mirror of Dexter's own childhood trauma. The twist doesn't just end a season, it tears open Dexter's carefully built double life, showing that no matter how precise he thought he was, his darkness bled into the people he loved most. What was supposed to be closure becomes the moment that defines his undoing. Breaking Bad. Walter White begins as a struggling high school chemistry teacher who turns to cooking meth after a cancer diagnosis, believing he can provide for his family. To everyone else, he's still the quiet, unremarkable brother-in-law. Meanwhile, Hank Schrader, a loud, confident DEA agent, is obsessed with catching a mysterious drug lord known only as Heisenberg. The hunt drives the story forward, with Hank piecing together evidence while never suspecting Walt. Then the mask slips. In a quiet moment, Hank picks up a book in Walt's bathroom, sees a handwritten note, and realizes the truth. The man he's been chasing isn't a distant criminal mastermind. It's his own brother-in-law sitting across the dinner table all these years. The reveal doesn't just flip the investigation, it detonates the entire story, turning a family bond into a time bomb, and showing that the enemy Hank was hunting was always right beside him. Dexter. For years, Dexter Morgan lives a double life, blood spatter analyst by day, vigilante serial killer by night. His one constant is his sister, Deborah, a detective who sees him as her moral anchor. She confides in him, trusts him, and leans on him to make sense of the chaos around her. But the tension builds as Deb unknowingly investigates the very crimes Dexter commits. Finally, the barrier collapses. Deb walks in on Dexter mid-kill, knife raised, plastic-wrapped victim at his feet. The secret he's kept from her since childhood shatters in an instant. The twist doesn't just expose Dexter, it redefines their entire relationship. The brother she thought she knew is a stranger, and every memory between them is poisoned with doubt. What was once the safest bond in her life becomes the most dangerous, turning family into the ultimate trap. Rick and Morty. Across infinite universes, every Rick has a Morty, his awkward, less intelligent grandson, who balances out his chaotic genius. Most Mortys are sidekicks, overshadowed and overlooked, while the Ricks run the show. At the Citadel, a sprawling society made entirely of Ricks and Mortys, the hierarchy is clear. Ricks rule, Mortys obey. But in a shocking turn, the status quo collapses. A seemingly ordinary Morty rises to power, exposing corruption and dismantling the system piece by piece. In the final reveal, this Morty isn't just ambitious, he's the long-teased evil Morty, the one Morty who rejected his role as sidekick entirely. He's been pulling strings for seasons, manipulating events to overthrow the order that kept Mortis subservient. The twist doesn't just subvert a joke, it flips the show's entire foundation, proving that even in a multiverse built to glorify Ricks, one Morty can break free and seize control. Dark. In the small town of Winden, Jonas grows from a confused teenager into the story's reluctant hero, determined to stop a time loop that's tearing families apart and causing the apocalypse. He clings to the belief that if he can just fix the past, he can save the future. Standing in his way is Adam, a scarred, ruthless leader who claims to want the same goal: the destruction of time itself. For a long stretch, it feels like a battle of opposites, the hopeful boy versus the monstrous villain. Then the truth drops. Adam isn't Jonas's enemy. He is Jonas, decades older and twisted by failure. The revelation doesn't just shock, it reframes the entire story as a tragic cycle where the savior and the destroyer are the same man. Jonas isn't trying to defeat Adam. He's struggling against the fate of becoming him. Severance. In a sterile corporate office, employees go about their daily work, but with one disturbing catch. They've undergone a procedure that severs their memories. At first, it seems like a workplace satire, with staff leaving their personal lives at the door. but the truth is far darker. Each worker has been split in two: an outie, who lives a normal life outside, and an innie, who only exists at the office. The innies are trapped in endless loops of fluorescent hallways and meaningless tasks, never seeing daylight, never knowing family, never sleeping, because whenever they leave, their consciousness switches off until the next shift. The reveal flips the show from a quirky workplace mystery to a horror about identity itself. The characters aren't just employees. They're prisoners, created for labor, whose entire existence is defined by a job they never chose. Money Heist. As the heist on Spain's Royal Mint unfolds, the cat-and-mouse game between the police and the professor becomes the show's beating heart. Inspector Raquel Murillo leads the investigation, methodical and relentless, determined to outsmart the mysterious mastermind. Meanwhile, in her personal life, she begins seeing a quiet, charming stranger named Salva, whose kindness feels like the one stable thing in the chaos. The audience watches both stories play out in parallel, her pursuit of the professor and her blossoming romance with Salva. Then the two threads collide. Salva isn't a stranger at all. He is the professor, meeting with Raquel in plain sight the whole time. The reveal flips their entire dynamic. Every date, every word, every smile was part of the heist itself. What seemed like intimacy was manipulation, and the strongest detective on the case had unknowingly been dining with the very man she was hunting. Scrubs. The hospital comedy often blended jokes with heartfelt moments, but one storyline takes it to a haunting level. Ben, Dr. Cox's brother-in-law and one of his closest friends, is diagnosed with leukemia. After treatment, he seems to recover, and his return brings lightness back into Dr. Cox's life. The episode follows Ben tagging along during a normal day at the hospital, cracking jokes, teasing JD, and reminding Dr. Cox to take things less seriously. But as the day unfolds, something feels slightly off. Ben never changes clothes. He never interacts with anyone else. And then, in the final moments, reality crashes in. JD and Dr. Cox aren't walking to a party. They're walking to Ben's funeral. Ben had died, and his presence throughout the episode was only in Dr. Cox's grief-stricken imagination. The twist strips away the comedy in an instant, showing that Scrubs wasn't just about laughs. It was about how doctors carry loss, even when they don't want to face it. Better Call Saul. Jimmy McGill spends his early career clawing his way toward respectability, desperate to escape the shadow of his shady past. The one person he looks up to is his older brother Chuck, a brilliant lawyer confined by a mysterious sensitivity to electricity. Chuck is the standard Jimmy can never live up to, the figure he believes is quietly rooting for him. But as Jimmy finally begins to gain traction, the mask slips. Chuck hasn't been mentoring him, he's been sabotaging him. He uses his influence to block Jimmy from passing the bar with honor, manipulates colleagues into distrusting him, and dismisses every success as fraud. The revelation cuts deeper than any legal battle. Jimmy's greatest enemy isn't the law or his own worst impulses. It's the brother he idolized. The twist reframes the entire series, showing that the man Jimmy wanted approval from most was the one who would never give it, no matter how hard he tried. Prison Break. When Michael Scofield deliberately gets himself arrested, it seems reckless until his true intentions unfold. His brother Lincoln is on death row for a crime he didn't commit, and Michael's plan isn't to wait for justice. It's to break him out. From the start, Michael appears almost too calm in prison, quietly mapping hallways, bribing guards, and assembling a team of inmates. The brilliance of his scheme comes into focus with one reveal. His entire upper body is covered in intricate tattoos. What looks like elaborate ink is actually a master blueprint of the prison itself, hidden in plain sight. Every pipe, every corridor, every piece of engineering is disguised as art across his skin. The twist reframes Michael from desperate brother to mastermind, showing that his incarceration wasn't the endgame. It was the first step of an escape, designed down to the last inch of his body. The Walking Dead. In the chaos of the zombie apocalypse, survivors cling to one fragile hope: that if you can avoid being bitten, you can survive. The rule feels absolute. Infection spreads through the bite. But when Rick's group reaches the CDC, they learn the truth that shatters every sense of safety. The virus isn't passed from walker to human. It's already inside everyone. No matter how careful you are, no matter how many battles you win, the moment you die, you'll turn. It isn't about avoiding monsters outside. The infection is written into the very biology of the living. The reveal shifts the entire show from survival horror to something more existential. Death itself, not just the bite, is the enemy. The walkers aren't an outside threat. They're humanity's inevitable future. Attack on Titan. For years, the series builds its terror around one idea: Titans are monsters. Towering, mindless giants that exist only to devour humans. The walls protect what little is left of civilization, and every battle is humanity versus the unknown. But then comes the reveal that tears that foundation apart. Titans aren't monsters at all. They're humans, transformed against their will into the very creatures everyone has been fighting to exterminate. Each snarling face, each grotesque body lumbering across the battlefield was once a person with a life, a family, a history. The revelation doesn't just change how the enemy is seen, it flips the morality of the entire war. Every kill is suddenly a tragedy. Every victory is built on the death of someone who never chose to become the enemy. The twist reframes the series from survival horror into something darker. Humanity isn't battling monsters, it's destroying itself. House of Cards. Frank Underwood begins as a smooth-talking congressman, always lurking in the background of power. He plays the loyal servant, whispering in ears, smiling for cameras, and promising favors. But beneath that southern charm is something colder. When a young journalist, Zoe Barnes, grows too curious about his methods, she believes their relationship gives her leverage. She doesn't realize she's only ever been a pawn. In one of television's most shocking moments, Frank leads Zoe onto a subway platform, leans close as if to share another secret, and then shoves her in front of an oncoming train. The reveal isn't just the murder itself, it's the clarity it brings. Frank isn't playing politics anymore. He's rewriting the rules, eliminating anyone in his way without hesitation. The twist cements him not as a schemer working the system, but as a predator willing to burn it down to take the throne.